Good afternoon, everyone. This is Greg Reibman, President of the Newton-Needham Regional Chamber. I want to thank you all for joining us today for a conversation with Representative John Lawn and City Councilor Alison Leary, who are running for the 10th Middlesex seat in the Massachusetts House. And we're going to actually just keep this as informal as we can. I've got some questions that I want to ask both of them and give everyone an opportunity to get to know the two candidates a little better and understand some of the differences. The two candidates are competing for the seat that's on your Democratic primary ballot starting on September 1st, so just a couple of weeks away. And if you have any questions, anyone watching, you can add them to the Q&A box, and I will do my best to get to the questions as we get into the conversation. But I want to start actually just to get to know each of you a little better. We'll start out with you, Representative Lawn. Tell us about your life before public service. Where did you grow up? What did you want to be when you grew up? Keep it to a minute or so, but just tell us a little bit about who John Lawn was before you became a public servant.
Right. Thank you, Greg, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. So I was born, I live 5 houses away from my mother. I was born in West Watertown. I attended St. Patrick's Grammar and High School in Watertown, went on to Merrimack College and majored in political science and sociology. I then came back and got married to my wife, Shannon, who is an ICU nurse at Tufts Medical. And together we have 5 children who are teenagers. So we're obviously got our hands full there in terms of just dealing with college and so many other issues. Raising teenagers, but it's been going well so far, knock on wood. But I then came back and bought a house in the neighborhood that I said I grew up in, and it's been a wonderful.
What did you want to be when you were a little boy?
I guess I always thought I would go into police work. My father was a police officer, came to this country. He was an immigrant and came to Watertown in the early 60s from Ireland in his late 20s. My mom was a nurse in England for 8 years after leaving Ireland, and then came to Boston. So both they raised 6 kids. Both my parents just had one sibling move to this country. So we kind of grew up together with not a big extended family. So
okay. I'm going to stop you there. Councilor Leary, tell us about where you came from, your roots.
Okay, I'm a Newton native.
Yeah.
I grew up on Franklin Street, and I attended local schools, Underwood, Bigelow, and Newton North. I have always had a strong interest in the outdoors, in the environment, in public service. So I was a bit of a jack of all trades. I didn't really settle down into what I really wanted to do. I did start doing work for Clean Water Action and other environmental organizations, which I enjoyed. I later moved into doing case management work for social service agencies, which is what I'm doing now. And I really love working and love politics and love serving as a city councilor. I got elected to the Newton City Council in 2000.
I want to stick it to your pre-public service life.
Oh, pre-public service. Okay.
Yeah.
So
how about when you were a little girl? What did you want to be?
So as I was saying, I wanted to be a marine biologist at one point. I thought about physical therapy at one point. I thought about doing environmental studies. I have 2 children, one who just graduated from Newton North, my daughter Olivia, and a son Peter, who's a rising junior at Newton North.
Great. Okay. So Representative Lawn, you sat on the Watertown Town Council before taking the seat. Just give us a quick update of that, kind of your public service history there.
Yeah, so I got involved in a local issue in my neighborhood. It was actually a site for a controversy about where to put a new police station. I started attending meetings and got kind of drawn into it. I was always involved in my community. I coached basketball at Watertown High School and assistant coach. I was in volunteering in youth sports before I even had children. So I was active in the community. I grew up at the Boys Club and was on the board of director of the Boys and Girls Club, which I still am today. So I was very involved in my community and then ran for city council in 2006 and served till 2012.
And you ran for state rep at what year?
I ran in a special election in 2011, and I've been so the sake
Or to fill in an open seat, right?
Correct. It was in a special election. Correct.
Okay. And Councilor Leary, same question. How did you get involved with the city council or public life?
So I also was involved, I was on the board of the Newton Conservators, the board of the League of Women Voters, involved in Green Newton. I've always had a special interest in environmental issues, particularly the climate change issues, but also plastic waste and the amount of plastic going into our oceans, and how we're mishandling a lot of our solid wastes and not doing a good job on recycling. And all this stuff is ending up in landfills or being burned. So that was sort of my first start. And I ended up also running for an open seat. And I just thought that at the time was right, after all my experience working locally and my experience with the League of Women Voters, and I attended those Don't Just Stand There, Run. And I just threw my hat in the ring. And I have to say, it's been one of the most gratifying things I've done. It's a tremendous opportunity to learn more about your community and to learn more about how things get done and what things are good, what things are not. I've learned so much about zoning and about land use and just about how we can work together to make our communities better.
Great. Okay, so let's go to the moment now. So Councilor Leary, people don't usually challenge an incumbent unless they're unhappy with something they've done or something they didn't do. Why are you challenging Representative Lawn?
Well, I had been thinking about challenging Representative Lawn for a couple of years. Partly as I have been very concerned about issues of the day. Again, climate change happening. I don't think enough is being done at the state level over the last few years. Recently, they did pass a climate bill, which is improved, but still, we're not, the science is saying we need to be fossil fuel free, net zero emissions by 2035, 2040 at the latest. And this still is pushing it out to 2050. I think we really need someone in the office who's going to be a big advocate and put a lot of work into that effort. I know from my work at the City Council that you really, if you have an issue, you really need to champion it. And I know working with 160 other legislators is difficult, as it is locally. We have 24, and I've learned to work together and forge bridges. So those are some of the reasons. I also am frustrated with the lack of transparency and accountability at the State House. I don't see a good reason why they are exempted from open meeting law. We're only one of 4 states that does that. And in fact, we're the only state that exempts all 3 branches of our government from open meeting law.
So let me, before I get Representative Lund to answer that, let me drill down a little bit. Is there something specific that he has done or specific things that he has done or not done?
Well, he hasn't been very transparent with his committee, the Joint Committee on Election Laws. That's one thing. I think he hasn't moved fast. I'm a champion of same-day voter registration, and I would like to see that front forward. It's been kicking around in his committee for a while now. That's one thing. And I just don't see him leading on the issues that I really desperately care about: climate, transit, housing.
Representative Lund?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I am the joint chair of Committee on Election Laws, which I just have been for a year and a half. So to say it's been kicking around in my committee, actually, I tried to explain this to Alison the other day. The bill is still alive in committee. We have extended it. I think she does not understand that we did not do same-day voter registration. It came as an amendment and was voted down heavily by many supporters of it, because we are very concerned during this COVID crisis that when we have all our seniors working at our polls, we do not want to add more confusion to election day. And that would bring a lot of stress. I worked with our cities and town clerks, and that was one of the biggest fears that they had, especially in Newton, Allison. I really spoke with City Clerk David Olson and many others across my district and across the state. We worked together, and that was one fear that they had, was putting our elderly poll workers in jeopardy and then having big lines. What we're trying to do in this election is make sure that we don't have lines, so that we can properly social distance, and so that people that we've people can vote safely and that we don't have to worry about that. So that bill is still alive, and I'm hoping to pass it. But to say that it's been kicking around, I'm only been the chair for a year and a half, and that bill we've extended to the end of session, and I am hopeful that we take it up. But it was not something that people felt we could do this year in terms of COVID-19. And also, when that vote came to the floor, all of the co-sponsors who voted against it because they understood that it was not the time to do it. And I think, Greg, let's talk about the transparency a little bit, because Alison certainly brings this up. That it's nothing that I want to run from, and I think she brings it up, and it's an important issue. That the legislature is exempt in the judicial branch from, and the governor from the open meeting law has been for quite a while. There was a committee that went and looked at that and studied it for a long time, and they haven't come back with any strong recommendations. But me as an individual, I am very transparent. My email, my cell phone, Alison, for example, has my cell phone, has my email. She keeps bringing this up about being transparent on committee votes. And in my 9 years in the legislature, Alison has never once asked me how I voted for a bill in a committee. All our bills that we vote on the floor are recorded. All our committees, all our hearings are public. We take written testimony. So to say that I'm not transparent or that the committee lacks transparency, I don't understand why you wouldn't ask me how I voted for a bill in committee if you were really concerned about it. Now, I understand this is an election and you're trying to make an issue of it, but I would like to know why you have never once asked me how I voted for a bill in committee in 9 years, and this is a major reason you're running against me when you certainly could.
May I, Greg?
Please, it's all yours.
First of all, John, I have asked you, and I actually have gone to your office in the State House, and you didn't see me. I guess there was some miscommunication, but I sat there, you never showed up, and you never rescheduled. I never rescheduled either. But it's not just you about the transparency issue, but you certainly are part of, you're certainly not making any effort to improve it. And when I just got an email from a man who runs one of those, magazines that prints a lot of information about, I won't say which one, that prints a lot of information about the State House. He said
Commonwealth Magazine?
It wasn't Commonwealth Magazine, no. But he offered me, he said for $300, he would let me know how you voted in every vote. And it's not just, I shouldn't have to call you up and ask you for votes or hunt them down. I think talking holistically at this legislature, there should be a good way to find out how all legislators voted. I know the Senate posts on a website and the House does not.
But let me ask you to clarify, is it a specific complaint about Representative Lawn, or are you concerned with the way that the House operates?
It's both.
Okay. And what's the specific part about him, just so we're all clear?
Well, there was a story in Commonwealth Magazine that I was also reading about, but that when they went and then called the heads of all the committees about finding out how they voted on a specific bill, and I can't remember what the specific one was in your committee, John. It had something to do with local elections, I think. But they were not able to get the information because they said that unless each member was told that their votes were going to be made public, that they would not release that information. And yours was one of the committee that did not release that information.
So can I respond? So Alison, can you point to one specific bill, since I've been your state representative for 9 years, that you've ever asked me how I voted for a bill in committee? Now people understand this is not a bill on the floor. Like the Election Laws Committee, we have over 100 bills. Some committees have, each term is 8,000 to 10,000 bills filed in the legislature. So a lot of legislatures would like to answer to their constituents. Now, and I'd like to go back to your point about an appointment, because I still have a record of it. It was from 2018. At that point, and I apologize because it was a scheduling conflict. You said you would get back in touch with me. You never did. I have the text. I save it. But also, Alison, at that point, you did not come into the State House as a concerned constituent. You were a paid lobbyist. who came in and were advocating for a special interest, and you paid thousands and thousands of dollars when you were coming in. And I have not seen you in here since. So that's an unfair accusation that you're saying that I'm not transparent, that I'm not willing to meet with people, because I do meet with everyone. And that was a one-time, and you know I've met with you several times. I've met with you.
Councilor Leary, can you clarify that one?
Yeah, I wasn't coming in as a paid lobbyist at that point. I think Councilor Representative Lon is talking about, I did lobby for the Community Preservation Act. I worked for the Community Preservation Coalition and worked for 2 years, and we were working to increase increase fees increase the fees at the the registry in order to fund the state level, because you know the CPA was dropping quickly and the state match was falling rapidly. And
so just to be clear, had you worked as a paid lobbyist at any point in your life or career?
Just for the Community Preservation Coalition, specifically to lobby for increased funding for the CPA, the Community Preservation Act.
Representative Lon, let me go back to this transparency thing just very quick. Do you agree that there should be a better system so that constituents can know how committee votes are, or do you like the system as it is?
No, I'm all for transparency, Greg. And but I got to say, in my 9 years, I've never had another constituent ask me how I voted for a bill in committee. So it's something that it's just not something that people ask. I am certainly willing and able, and I have my cell phone, and that's what I'm saying. It's not something that here is a concern, but what the joint committees do is set rules at the beginning of the year in the new term, and a lot of the rules carry over, and that some committees release things to advocate groups or the public right away, and some don't. But I'm happy to release any votes, and I commit to doing that, but I really have not had it as an issue, Greg. It's really
so let me ask you a different question. I've noticed that, at least I haven't been able to find that you have a website. I can't think of another elected official or candidate who doesn't have a website. It's 2020, I'm just wondering why.
Right, I did, Greg, at the beginning, and then it was not getting a lot of use, and I found that it was through other social media networks and having my cell phone and email available. As I said in the hearing the other day, there's people in my south side of Waltham and other areas in my district don't even have internet. So it's not something that even everybody even has. So in this day and age of voicemail, social media, email, it's something that I keep up with. And be honest with you, I really try to stay off social media. I'm not big into social media, certainly during campaign season, but I would much rather meet with people and talk with people. But I'm available, I'm out there in my district, and I'm accessible. And I really have not people really ask me for a website. When I had it for a couple of years, it wasn't getting a lot of activity that way, so we just didn't use it.
Councilor Leary, I see you on social media a lot. Explain this, why you think it's important.
I think social media is critical, and where it may be true that there are people who don't go on social media or use it very often, and there are particularly older people that may not have internet. There's I think there's very few of them, but there may be some. But I think it's important to have every avenue of communication open, and of course, being able to call your representative is important, and that's one venue. And I think Councilor Lon, Representative Lon is good about that. That is important. But I think it's critical to have a website. People contact me on my website. It's a way to get information out. It's a way to be proactive. It's a way to let people know what's going on. Hunting around on a website is, that's something people do at the end of the day or in the morning before they have breakfast to find out what's going on. I also have a very, I'm on Twitter a lot, and I find that's a great way to get information and to get information out, especially young people who are very often active on Twitter. Same with Facebook. That's a really important way to both spread information and get information from constituents.
And let me ask you about your Twitter feed. So you use the Twitter handle Environista.
Yes, I do.
Should voters worry that you're a one-issue candidate and that maybe you're too extreme on the environment?
No, I don't think so. That Environista one was predated my of course my city council work and everything, but I don't want to change it because I have so many contacts on it now. But if you look at my website, you'll see all the issues that I care about, and that includes funding transit, better housing and more diverse kinds of housing. It includes economic and social justice. It includes, of course, more transparency and communication with the State House.
So, Councillor Lawn, should voters be concerned that maybe Leary, Representative Lawn, Representative Leary, Councillor Leary is maybe too extreme on the environment, and maybe that's too much of her focus?
Well, Greg, as you know, through COVID-19, and I appreciate Councilor Leary's commitment to the environment, and I'm very proud to have voted 2 weeks ago on a climate change bill that which was one of the leading in the country, and I'm committed to that and so many important issues. But the reality is we have, and especially from COVID-19, so many issues that still need to be dealt with in society. I mean, I work on a lot of housing issues. I'm working, and I got funding to build more low-income housing in our housing authorities, and I'm working with the housing directors on those and having design plans done to add more low-income housing in our housing authorities. But there are, veterans issues. I'm working on some veteran housing issues and trying to get veterans more ability to stay in their communities, and that's a bill that I've filed, and it's in third reading right now. And I'm hoping that what it will do is allow in where there is inclusionary zoning and allow for affordable units that a veteran would also get preference like they do in affordable, in public housing. So that's an issue. We still have, an opiate epidemic. We still need to, worry about criminal justice reform and so many other issues that are important. And, being a legislature, in the legislature, you realize that we all have certain things that we work on, but nothing gets accomplished alone. And so I work with my colleagues in the State House, and I've risen up to leadership, and not because I'm a one issue person, and not that I only just care about the issues that I care about, but you do get nothing done alone. So I work with my colleagues and work on the issues that are important to them as well. And that's what makes a well-rounded legislator. And that's why people then support you when your issues are important. So
just to be clear though, do you think that she's a one-issue candidate?
I've really honestly only heard her talking about one issue, which is climate change. And I do worry about that because there's many that I'm concerned about.
I think the environment touches so many important things. It includes how people get around transit. It includes how we build housing, how we use land, the cleanup of the Charles River. It's still the stormwater. A lot of stormwater goes into the Charles River. It's really a jewel of all three of our communities, and yet there's parts of it they're just still very, very dirty and full of trash. And I'd like to see issues around stormwater. As I said, my main issue, climate change, is an incredibly important issue for all of us. I think we understand the implications and what we're facing. And it means that we have to look at how we overall live as a community, how we do things, how we get around, how we live. So you can't really be a one issue if you're talking about the climate. As a matter of fact, one of the most important ways to reduce greenhouse gases is to eat a plant-based diet, right? So educating people about that is important as well. And, making sure that our local farming and farmers markets, and we're getting freshly sourced produce, all that is important. So I actually think that if you were to say that I'm very concerned about climate, then I'm concerned about dozens and dozens of issues that face us.
So, Councilor Leary, as you know, you had proposed in Newton that to mandate that businesses recycle, to require the businesses recycle, which they don't do right now, but not that the city be responsible for picking up the recycling, or there be a way for the businesses to cover that cost. Is that the kind of thing you want to do on the state level? Require businesses to recycle, but not provide a path for them to do so?
I'd want to provide a path, but Greg, you and I have had these discussions before. I think we're all responsible for environmental impacts, and particularly trash and recycling. All the costs get pushed onto cities and towns. And I don't think that's fair. I think that some of the producers and the manufacturers have to be part of the solution. It's called like extended producer responsibility. There are a number of bills at the State House now on these issues. And the Mass DEP works on a solid waste master plan every 10 years. And every 10 years we fail to meet the goals. So there's really both a lack of political will, but actually there's also, we need to have more work going between private industry, the manufacturers and the producers of consumer products, and the state and the cities and towns and the recycling processors. I mean,
Councilor Mon, help me understand where you stand on environmental issues and why we should feel confident that you'd be out there protecting the environment that just
Well, I think Greg, right away, and listen, I agree with Alison on the environment. We all do. We all have children that we want to leave this planet a better place for. I'm not going to attack her on that. That is a very noble thing. The Charles River is a huge concern that just for this district alone, we see in the water chestnuts that are really strangling very large parts of the Charles River. I have worked with KCON on that issue with the Charles River watershed and got funding to harvest some of those, because it's now at a point where we need to do it again. We need to stay on top of it. And unfortunately, funding hasn't been there, but it's something that's a priority for me, especially up in the Waltham area, but all along the Charles River. We really need to keep fighting and keeping that river as a natural resource that it is. Listen, the environmental justice bill that we just passed a few weeks ago is one of the most important legislation that's been passed in a long time. And that really provides that, in areas where people, like especially around Logan Airport, where, gasoline from planes and stuff have caused kids with asthma and other things. We have really just passed a bill right now that will protect those minority communities so that no things can go into a community that is not of color or a minority community. They have to meet certain thresholds. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm glad to work with my legislators on the legislation that's been filed around that, and I was proud to vote for that. So I believe that I do fight for the environment. I think it's extremely important, and I agree with Alison on that, and I think everybody agrees on that.
Great. Let's move on then. Reminder, we'll take your questions. You can put your questions into the Q&A box. So let's start with you, Representative Lon. The pandemic isn't ending anytime soon. Give us some new ideas to help support our small businesses.
Well, I think you've seen, Greg, the economic bill that we just passed in the House last week, which we legalized online gambling, which we're hoping those revenues will support a lot of our small businesses. It will go to a distressed restaurant fund, which we know from I've been in constant contact with the business community in my district. As you see, and I don't know if you've been down to Moody Street in Waltham, what was done for outside seating, it really has been well received and something that's been a shot in the arm. But we really have so much to do in terms of relief, because every industry is affected. From housing, we have, we're going to have a massive eviction issue, which we've had a moratorium on, but we're going to need some federal money, and we're going to need help, because our landlords are not going to be able to withhold this. Our tenants are not going to be able to withhold this. What we deal with so much with people with unemployment. My office has been overwhelmed with trying to assist people. And we know that that's coming, that people are going to need relief, and we need federal help. But the state has done a lot in terms of trying to help our small businesses.
So just to be clear, though, the online gambling, the restaurant relief fund, the cap on home delivery fees, like Uber and Lyft, meal deliveries, none of that's been approved because none of it's gotten through the joint committee. So it could be that all of those things that you and the state, the representative House worked on this year don't happen this year.
Well, some have already gone through, Greg. So there's an economic development bill so some of those things have already gone through, which was like streamlining the ABCC to allow restaurants to do the outdoor seating. We did that right away. We waived interest and penalties on restaurants for the meals tax and payments until December. We allowed the cocktails to go for restaurants. So we've been doing things, and the caps and commissions on the online restaurants, we did cap at 15% because our restaurant.
Well, you capped it, but it's not approved.
So that
it doesn't help the restaurants if you capped it, but you can't.
We approved it. It's in a conference committee. It just went last week. So that is already, it's in conference committee, and hopefully that will be resolved soon. But we've done our work on that in terms of being able to vote for that. And we've been advocating for that. We're hoping that that comes out very soon and the governor signs it.
All right. Councilor Leary, give me some new ideas for helping businesses during the pandemic.
Well, I want to tell you that I have been aware of this, the crisis in our local restaurants. I see it up the street from me in Newton-Needham, and right away I signed on to a letter that would cap the third party delivery app fees for the restaurants. I thought it was really unfair that they were charging local restaurants between 25 and 30% of the order to do that. I also have signed on to a letter to the mayor to reduce liquor license fees. That's another big issue. Anything that we can do to reduce the costs to our local businesses, I would be willing to look at on very favorably. You know that the city of Newton did establish the COVID-19 Small Business Recovery Grant, which I think is really important. And we received like $1.1 million from the CDBG fund from Housing and Urban Development on that. And approximately $300,000 will go towards the Small Business Recovery Grant Program.
Any new ideas though, either one of you? I'm looking for something I haven't heard yet.
Well, one of the things that I love, and I think we need to do more of in Newton, I don't know, this isn't a brand new idea, but opening up the streets for eateries, for pedestrians. I love what they did in Waltham on Moody Street. I've gone there several times for dinner, and it's wonderful. And they're putting out plants and tents, and it's very attractive lighting. I don't see why we couldn't do that on Langley Road, for example. That's one place that pops right out. Not just put like the cement berms out, the cement barriers, but have it really inviting. I would like to see more of that. In terms of new ideas, we could probably try, and I would like to see like a weekend village day where we go in and encourage everyone to go to one particular village at a time. For example, I'm thinking of Newton now because I'm still a city councilor. Mm-hmm. Something similar we did around Christmas, encourage people to visit our local stores. We have musicians going around, maybe jugglers, maybe something we can also get people to bring their kids to, something like a mini fair that the mini fairs that we do usually in the fall and the spring at different villages.
Representative Lund, you have a new idea for us?
I've heard tossed around, and what I'm doing, Greg, is just engaging with the business community with ideas, and I think that's a lot of them that have come forward. I think too about some of these empty storefronts. Do we allow for more pop-up shops for people to come in, small businesses, to sell products without getting into leases that will also help landlords? So I think that's something that's a good idea. But I think, we've heard a lot of ideas. I think we need to keep them coming, but I think a lot of those ideas too, we got to get from the business community, because what really helps certain industries doesn't always help others. So it's complicated, as you know, but we just need to be listening to the business community and doing all we can to support them.
Let's talk about childcare. Without it, we don't get our economy started, and obviously we got big problems with everything else too. But help us. I'm looking for how do we solve and address that? It's particularly through the legislature. I know there's lots of other things you might be concerned about, but how does the legislature address the gap, the problems both with our public schools, but even preschools, in terms of finding a way to get our kids safely cared for? And Representative Lon, I'll let you start first.
Sure. Yeah, I think in the legislature, we've got to work to figure out, that's a very complicated, like everything else, it's very complicated to get this economy rolling again. And hopefully if a vaccine is discovered. But before that, we have our challenges because we need to get people back to work. Even parents that are working from home have child care issues. I dealt with that at an extreme level myself and realize how hard it is. But I think the legislature, we're going to have to keep brainstorming on ways on how to support and keep kids safe. And we got to keep people who take care of kids safe. And that's where it gets complicated, Greg. And there's no one solution to that. But I think, we have bills filed, I know at the State House to work on that. I know the committees are, as we know, extended session because COVID-19 is requiring us to look at issues like this and figure out how to best serve that community. How do we get parents back to work? How do we get their children cared for safely? But it's complicated, and I don't have a straight answer for it. It's something that we're going to have to work on because we have to keep people safe and we have to get people back to work, and that's not easy.
Councilor Leary?
Greg, childcare has been a huge problem even before COVID, and it hits women disproportionately as well. I think that we need to have federal and state subsidies for childcare providers. I think we should increase pay for childcare workers, maybe including hazard pay. But we need to be able to make childcare more affordable for everybody who wants to. And now with COVID upon us, we have to make sure that we have quick testing, turnaround testing for COVID tests for direct care workers, that we're able to separate children a little bit more and give them more space, maybe more outdoor time. We also need to have strategies in place for each individual childcare provider. But overall, we've ignored this problem for too long. We need to have some kind of universal subsidized childcare in this country, in Massachusetts. And I think it's both a state and a federal issue.
Okay. A submitted question here. It seems to me we have three epidemics: COVID, systemic racism, and the real silent epidemic, child sexual abuse. Given the recent story about Patrick Rose, the former president of the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, what are your positions on strengthening our laws and eliminating the SOL, statute of limitations, for child sexual abuse, both civilly and criminally? Councilor Leary, I'll let you go first.
I think the statute of limitations I don't think that should apply in cases of child sexual abuse. I think that was an issue with the whole Catholic Church priest events that came on. A lot of times when you're a child, you don't report these things till maybe some years later, and they still should be addressed. So anything we can do to strengthen laws to protect victims, I'm in favor of.
Representative Lon?
Sure. Greg, that's an issue that I've worked on. It was an issue that came to me as a constituent when I first got elected. And I tried in my first term to get the statute of limitations. And I realized early on that I really had no idea what I was up against. And I was quickly thwarted back. And, you know, it was, as we know, as Alison mentioned, the Catholic Church abuse scandal that broke. But many people of child sexual abuse take many years for them to recover and be able to be strong enough to face their victims. And our laws did not allow for that. So I worked to change those laws. I sent a letter to Cardinal O'Malley and asked to meet with him, and was able to get him on board. The Catholic Church was in strong opposition, as was many insurance companies. And I didn't realize the power of those. So to go back and start from scratch the next term, I did that. And I also got to credit Senator Brownsberger. As I said, nothing gets done alone. I got him on board. He was a tremendous advocate with me and helped me with that. And I'll never forget, you know, the work that he did. And again, it's not I did. I had to go convince a lot of people, but it was not just me. It was Senator Brownsberger, many advocates, and we were able to change that law and give victims that chance. So that's something I'm very proud of, and something that I'll continue to work for, because it's something that's very important, as we say in the paper, you know, so many times, and it's across every spectrum of society. It's a real issue, and it's something that we're going to keep fighting.
Can you help me understand your position on the police reform bill?
Excuse me?
Tell us about your position on the police reform bill.
Oh, sure. Yep. So I voted against the police reform bill, although I believe in police reform. I believe that we need good, comprehensive police reform. I believe that our police believe we need good, comprehensive police reform. What I didn't agree with was when in the emotion that we were doing it in and how rushed we were. There were many things that have so many unintended consequences of the police reform bill that I was concerned about. For starters, I represent an area that has an incredible, dedicated, educated police force, and I stand by them. I believe that they know that there's issues that need to be dealt with. and I believe they do. We've got accredited police departments in Watertown, Waltham, and Newton who go through vigorous training. We have, for example, in Watertown, we have 85% of our police have 4-year degrees. Many have master's, law degrees. But you know what we're seeing before COVID-19, before George Floyd, a decrease in the amount of candidates who want to be police officers. So I'm worried about the message that we're sending, that we don't do this we do this in a very rushed way. I believe things like qualified immunity are very complicated. And I believe that we should be thoughtful, and we should have a lot of people at the table for that. I sat down with people of color in my community. I sat down with police officers of color in my community before that vote. I did a lot of research. I spoke to as many people as I could, and I have concerns that we were doing it too quick. And what I heard from law enforcement was all these issues should be on the table. We're happy to talk about them, but just in such rushed way, I was concerned about that, and I stand by that vote.
Councilor Leary, do you agree with him?
No, I do not. I don't, first of all, I just want to say, I don't think that the Black Lives Matter message and police reform are mutually exclusive. I think we've needed to to reevaluate not just our police force, but the whole idea of what public safety should look like in this country for a long time. And the George Floyd incident just put a real spotlight on it. And when you saw those people on the streets, you're hearing, those are people whose voices are not being heard. I would have voted for the police reform bill. I thought it was a step in the right direction. Usually the legislature moves at a glacial pace. The fact that they were able to do something in several weeks of intense negotiation and discussion, I don't think that's a negative. And there's always opportunities to improve bills going forward. I also was disappointed in his voting against amendments. Like, I'm concerned about the use of tear gas on our people. I mean, that's a weapon it's banned as a weapon of war, and we use it on our own residents. And also the no-knock warrant amendment. I was concerned about that as well. It simply said that the police needed to be aware that there were young children or adults, older adults over 65 in the home. No-knock warrants, I think, are dangerous both to the police and to the people inside. And I also think we need to evaluate public safety overall in terms of other ways we strengthen our communities and how people feel safe. It's not always a heavily armed police officer that makes you feel safe. It's your own community. It's the resilience of your own community. It's your local school. It's your libraries. It's your resources that make people feel safe. People with a steady job and a health insurance that they can afford and a place to live, they're not the kinds of people that are going to be going out and causing crimes. So I like to look at things more holistically as well. Do I respect and support the police? Of course I do. And I agree with everything Representative Lawn said about the Newton, the Waltham, and the Watertown police. They're extremely well trained. I went to school with some of the Newton police officers, and I know they don't have an easy job. Frankly, I think we put too much on the police to handle. And I think it's important that we're talking about what other professionals should be getting involved, especially something like someone with a mental illness or other kinds of smaller efforts.
Representative Lawn, you want to add something here?
Sure, and I think everyone agrees that we have great police, but there was one, and I don't believe it was an issue, as I said, about Black Lives Matter. Our Black and Latino caucus were very involved, and some of those items were not one of some of their priorities in the beginning. But I think we need to do real comprehensive police reform. I really think we should look at the whole job, right? We should really think about, what are we asking people to do? This profession as an institution is dealing with so much, right? And mental health issues that they deal with, that is not what it was designed to do. That job is not what it was designed to do. We also should look at the job as it's set up. It's predicated on, you can't work 40 hours a week. The starting salary of a police officer in Newton or Watertown or Waltham is around $60,000 a year. You cannot feed a family on that. It's predicated on you working overtime and details. So we should be also looking at the mental health of our police officers and what kind of stressful situations we're putting them in. So let's look at that police work in a comprehensive way and how we can support them as well so that they can handle with stressful situations. Listen, my brother Mike, as many know, is the police chief from Watertown. He's someone I have more respect for than any person in this world. All right, we talk about things like this, people coming into CVS at 2 o'clock in the morning with mental health issues. Those people need help. They don't need to be, but it all comes down on our police, right? They have to respond to that. They have to deal with that mental health issue. They take them to the hospital, they get released, and they're back in CVS a few hours later. That's a system that's broken, and that's a system that is requiring our police to operate in very dangerous situations. Listen, I met with Officer Chesney, wife, the Weymouth police officer that was killed. That police officer, and this is why this job is so complicated, that police officer got a call for an erratic driver at 7:30 in the morning. That erratic driver ended up taking off. Officer Chesney, at the end of his shift, apprehended him. He was behind a house. He picked up a rock. Now, Officer Chesney asked him to drop the rock. He didn't. Officer Chesney had his gun drawn. The man threw the rock and hit Officer Chesney in the head, took his gun and shot him 10 times in the head. But that's a call in policing that can happen, and it does happen, right? And those are mental health issues. And to see his wife, we got some very compelling testimony from his wife. And I had met her as chair of veterans when I was the chairman of veterans. He was also a vet. And we need to understand how difficult policing is and how we can support them. Now, if our
running a little short on time. So, Councilor Leary, do you have anything on this topic, or can I move on to the next question?
Just briefly, I mean, that's a very, very difficult story to hear. I was very distraught when that happened. That was probably a couple of years ago now. And I know how difficult the police jobs are. But I think some of the funding that, in terms of the militarization of the police, that's money that I think could go towards other programs, including mental health care, because we do need to treat people holistically, and we do expect our police officers to take on too much. I agree with Representative Lawn on that.
How would you vote on the Safe Communities Act, Councilor Leary?
I would vote yes on it.
And Councilor Lawn, and Representative Lawn?
Yes, I would. And Greg, what I do on issues like Safe Communities Act, and Representative Balzer has been a leader, and I support her in that. I've met with her. I met with our police chief from Watertown, Waltham, and Newton, and I met with them on the Safe Communities Act and got their input, and went back to Representative Balzer with their input. And so I'm very hopeful that that will pass. I'm a strong supporter of it. Our police chiefs are strong supporters of it because they know it makes our community safer. But that's the kind of stuff that I do behind the scenes. I don't put it out in social media. I'm not the lead sponsor on the bill, but I can support it and be supportive of other legislators to make sure that that gets passed.
All right, I'm going to move on and then try to get you to answer these quickly if you can. John Lawn is a Watertown guy. Alison Leary's from Newton. Why should someone from Newton vote for Lawn? Why should someone from Watertown vote for Leary? I'll let you go first, Leary.
Okay. So all three communities.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. All three communities, I think, are closely connected. We share a lot of the same issues around housing, transit, environmental quality. We share the Charles River. We share issues of care about our schools and investing in our schools. So as being from Nonantum, I'm a stone's throw from Watertown and Waltham. These issues are all our issues. I own them. They're part of us. I've always looked holistically as an elected official. I've always looked either citywide or statewide or worldwide, because we all share the same planet. So I think you need to look at the candidate themselves and where they stand and what their priorities are and how hard they're going to work for you.
Representative Lawn?
Simply put, Greg, I have a strong passion for the neighborhood of Nonantum. It is a proud neighborhood. It is people that take care of each other. It's people that have strong traditions. And over my years in the legislature and before that, I've had a great a respect for that neighborhood and how they take care of each other. And, you know, I think from the support I have in the neighborhood, and hopefully it translates to a vote, but I've worked very hard for those constituents. I have a lot of support in the neighborhood, and I'm very proud to represent them. And I think they realize that, and I hope they, you know, that will translate on election day.
So which one of you is best for Waltham?
Me.
Tell us really quickly why.
Well, I think again, one of my issues is racial and economic justice. Waltham's a very diverse community. There's a large population of lower income folks, people of color, Spanish speaking folks. I think they need a seat at a table, and I'm willing to give them the room. I also will be making sure I'm doing outreach and going when we're allowed to meet in person again, which I'm really looking forward to. I will be attending neighborhood meetings. I'll be attending Democratic Committee meetings. I'll be attending environmental organizations, community.
Representative Lawn, your turn. Sorry to cut you off.
You cut me off a lot.
I'm very proud to represent the city of Waltham. I have a lot of friends, family that live there. I've been a strong advocate for the community, and I think, as you know, when I won this race many years ago, it's a predominantly Waltham seat, and I was able to have a lot of relationships with people, and I've built on those relationships over the years. I have a strong support of the mayor and most of the city council in Waltham who are supporting me, because they know I show up for them. They know that I respond to the real needs of the community, and I've been doing that, and I hope to continue to do that for the people of Waltham, because it's a great community, and I'm very proud to represent it.
Representative Lawn, tell me one thing that you wish the governor would do differently in managing the pandemic.
I think I have to say, Greg, I think the governor's done a great job on the pandemic. I think he's been very cautious. I wish people across the country did more like him. I know there's frustration with some people in business and others, but I think he's done it in a very cautious way, and I think he's listened to science. I think he's thoughtful. I think that the moves that he's made, looking back right now, he's done the right thing. We have one of the lowest transmission rates in the country. And for us to get back on our feet, both in the economy and kids back to school, we have to cut that down. And I think he's been a leader on that, and I support him on that.
Okay. Councilor Leary, same question.
I also think Governor Baker has done overall a very good job managing a very difficult crisis with COVID. However, I would like to find out more about how he's going to be helping underserved people. And also going back to childcare, which is so critical to get people back to work. Can we figure out a way that we can get some funding for subsidizing childcare programs? And I would like to see more help for local businesses as well, again, in terms of subsidies, PPP programs, things like that.
Great. All right, so I'm going to give each a chance to make one final pitch to voters today. First, let me thank you both for your time and remind everyone that this is a contest on the September 1st Democratic primary ballot. We'd love to have you take 90 seconds each and tell us why you would like your vote from our audience. And I will start with you, Councilor Leary. Okay.
Greg, thank you so much for hosting this event. I thought it was a wonderful discussion, and thank you to the Newton-Needham Chamber. I have been working very hard at the local level on issues I deeply care about. I know that I can be effective statewide in the 10th Middlesex. The issues around climate change, economic and racial justice, more funding in transit. I see these things as critically important, as well as I'm still going to say I want to see the rules changed at the State House so that people have more time to look at amendments. I don't believe the speaker should have unlimited time. I think he should have term limits. There's lots of areas where I think we can be more transparent and open and inclusive. Sometimes people don't contact their legislators because they don't know what to contact them on. You don't know what you don't know. So I'd like to see a lot more of that information online and accessible and in the papers. And I will be a fighter for that as well. I will be working full time as a legislator. as a legislator. I will be in the communities. I will have open communication at all levels, in person when that's allowed, as well as on social media and Facebook and via Zoom.
Perfect.
So I ask for your vote on September 1st or before, if you're going to be voting early or voting by mail.
Thanks. And just to clarify, you'll give up your city council seat if elected?
I have to give up my city council seat as
Right.
elected, but
Okay.
I'll also give up will stop working full time in my current job.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Councilor Lon. You got 90 seconds.
Thank you, Greg, and to the Chamber for this event today. As we all know, we are at a crossroads in this country. Well before George Floyd incident and COVID-19, we are witnessing a country that is divided in so many ways and on so many levels. We have witnessed an unprecedented amount of division that is sadly destroying the civility and decency that we must have for each other. Not only because we are neighbors and friends, but also because we are all in this together. Our challenges are great, and we as elected leaders and engaged community activists need to be pulling together to heal our communities racially, emotionally, and economically. I know many of my friends and supporters who think very different than me on some policy issue. That's okay. I still like them, and I believe that we must respect each other's opinions and understand where people are coming from so we can make advancements to these great challenges that we are facing. Sadly, I think social media, and although it has its positives, has helped create and fuel a division in this country. We must work to bring respect and understanding to each other's thoughts and ideas. We need leaders who are going to work to bring people together, not apart. I have the support of almost every elected official that represents my district. I think this shows that I've worked hard to build relationships with them and has made me a more productive and transparent representative. My door is always open. I'm always willing to listen to people. No issue is too small. When I first ran, Greg, for the seat in 2011, I ran against 3 opponents in the Democratic primary. It was a hard-fought race, but respectful. Each of those opponents today I call a friend, and I have the utmost respect for. Each of them reaches out to me when they have a concern, and each of them have endorsed me in my current campaign.
Thank you very much. Your time's up, but
Okay.
and that was the one time that I did try to keep the clock running. So thanks to both of you very much. I really enjoyed this opportunity to hear from you both, and very grateful for both of you for your willingness to serve and our public and for the support that you've given in the past, and I'm sure you will in the future to our business community. So thanks everybody, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Have
much.
a great day, everybody.
You too.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.